Please, another wonderful Silicon Prairie News welcome, Jerri Chou.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh my gosh. Oh, everybody here is so friendly. I love it. I'm from New York, so we don't do that. It's wonderful. As was mentioned, my name is Jerri Chou, and I'm here to talk more about the social innovation enterprise space. And considering that a lot of people in this room are entrepreneurs, sort of start by posing the question of asking, why you're here. Gotcha. Yes, each and every one of you in the room, to just think about why you're here. Oftentimes, I think a lot of people who work in enterprise and innovation are doing what they're doing for something greater than themselves, to play a small or specific part in something with a purpose, or realizing a really big vision. Again, as entrepreneurs tend to do, think really big, dream really big, pursue really big. It could be grand as, reaching space, or something small. This is a friend's small startup calligraphy business. Either way, you're starting to see more people pursuing this blend of life plus this thing that's bigger than you, which I believe really creates value, which is inherently good. As in, a lot of people talk about social good, social change, but I feel like that blend is inherently good. And that's really spreading, that sense of wanting to find purpose and meaning in the businesses that we create, the work that we do every day, to things from everything from sort of remaking American government, to individual forms of expression, to challenges around big issues in our world. This is a photo of the oil spill from previously that the X Prize Foundation put out a call and prize to clean up. So what? So we're all pursuing our passions, and this kind of thing is spreading. I think, to Andy's point, it's creating a really big shift. People are less consumers. Andy's given me like a ton to riff on, so I'll just keep referencing back. But people are really becoming less consumers and much more creators, participants, and again, going back to the Renaissance, I believe citizens. I really like this quote by this game developer, which said, if the last era was encapsulated by cinema or consumption, this next one will be summed up in gaming because it's participatory. I think a lot more people are realizing sort of what Maslow's hierarchy of needs calls self-actualization, realizing your purpose and your place in what you're supposed to do in this world. We like to think of it as human potential, which everyone has and is super great, and just sort of waiting to be unlocked, to figure out how people can participate more in the economy, in startups, in creating their own ventures. Which is why I think this startup dialogue is really important, because I do believe that is flourishing. More people are starting to create, more people are starting ventures, startups, and I think a lot of that is due to a bunch of very large macro factors that are global. This isn't just a United States-based thing. There are issues ranging from three main ones, I believe, including climate change and issues of peak resources. We're finally starting to understand that we don't live in a world of infinite resources, that we do have constraints, maybe something to innovate within, but that, poverty is becoming an issue around the world. We're starting to understand why and how that works. We're starting to understand the impacts of climate change and how real and important that is, and that we need to innovate around resources, just physical resources as well as human ones. To that end, the sense of beyond growth economics that's emerging, the understanding that while capitalism is really great, there are opportunities for innovation in that too. And people starting to think about, what does an economics that sort of values well-being look like? How can we maybe redefine our understanding of consumption and ownership to one that's more about sharing and not needing to own everything? And one of the biggest, again, is referenced for Andy, is this development of network technology that's connecting all of us. in ways like never before that allow for decentralized collaboration, for decentralized democracy and development, for redistribution of wealth and open sourcing of everything from models for ways of doing things to franchising and different models that allow people to have ownership in different ways. So I think all of this is leading to a really big shift from sort of previous paradigm that we've been living in, which is one that was built during a time of one-way communication, of one-way development, which was very based on large-scale, very heavy, globalized, based on proprietary nature, goods and services, with very little, to Andy's point again, resilience, to an era that we sort of call the one of generativity. That's much more based on micro or social enterprises, networked, autonomous, sort of organized structures, and open business, empowered communities who are able to, again, sort of be citizens and participate. This is sort of, that shift is sort of values, at least, has happened before. Some people say that it happened in the 60s and 70s, but again, now it's really different because it is global. This is a picture from Maker Faire Africa, which happened in 2010 and will be happening again this year. And for those who know Maker Faire here, it's sort of a celebration of DIY culture, people, creating, hacking, learning how things work, and making everything from knit crafts to 3D printers and things of the like. And now Maker Faire has traveled to Africa. It will be traveling to India, likely Brazil, and it's just interesting to see how that sort of shared paradigm shift is being replicated elsewhere. But it's also interesting, to Andy's point about constraint-based innovation, to see how that sort of DIY ethos can create innovations that are really useful and that can, I think, translate from the developing world to the developed. This is a photo of a bike-based phone charger, which is much more relevant to the local context in Africa. Jugaad, as Andy mentioned again, constraint-based innovation based in India. And you're starting to see some of the technologies that are developed within local communities because they're constraint-based and because they're inherently lightweight. Start to move here. Things like M-Pesa, which was created basically by people sharing mobile cell phone minutes between each other as a form of payment. So, hey, I don't have $10, I'll give you 100 minutes instead, and basically essentially started a new monetary system that I think Dwola will have some interesting things to talk about in a little bit. But that's just now coming to the States. And so it's really interesting to see how those global models can be replicated as well, because again, what previously has been very opaque in one way is now much more networked and transparent. And so we can take models and replicate them elsewhere, or we can have cultures that translate from the United States all the way to Nairobi. So what does this mean for business? I think it's becoming truly social. So we talked about, I do a lot of work in social innovation, but that definition of social gets really interesting when you start looking at this paradigm shift of people who are now empowered, entrepreneurs, makers, collaborators, because it means there's a big opportunity for business to work with these people, with entrepreneurs, with individuals to create value together. So there's a shift from just producing a product or service to working with other people to either create that product, services around it, and just create value together. This model just basically goes from what was previously very closed, the production of a car. we all understand that people very large companies develop cars, push it out, push communication out about why you should like the car, et cetera. And you can see that starting to move towards, a Zipcar and a shared economy where we no longer need to own or necessarily have cars that are produced in bulk that, often for the companies as well can mean, not necessarily the most efficient or effective form of production. All the way at the top right, you have probably the most open form of business, which are things like Local Motors, which is a company that basically created the first completely crowdsourced car with thousands of designers working on it, produced and manufactured with the capacity of corporate manufacturing. Made for you if you go on the website and purchase a car in your local area. Talk a little bit more about that later. But I think that this sort of social business has an opportunity to unlock human potential and to create more value with people who are empowered. And so this social entrepreneurship gets really interesting because I was, talking to someone from the Kaufman Foundation earlier last night, actually, about this question of, well, is social entrepreneurship really just entrepreneurship? Because is it just good business? And I think that in essence it is, but combined with this sort of understanding of a newly empowered people in society, I think it gets really interesting because people, I do believe, are looking at societal issues, health, education, et cetera. And as entrepreneurs do, to Andy's point again, what they're really good at is solving problems. And I do believe that entrepreneurs are looking more at social problems and issues. This was just a quote from a research participant in a social innovation research project done by dream.org. And he said, my generation made our money destroying the world. Your generation is going to make their money putting it back together. And I thought that was, a really beautiful way of summing up a lot of what I'm talking about. I see this a lot, and I don't think it's just because I'm optimistic. Although I do host the Feast Social Innovation Conference, which is all about bringing together leading thinkers from across disciplines, architecture, food, health, to share and showcase new ways of making the world a better place. So innovations in healthcare, innovations in education, housing, et cetera. And so I do see a lot more excitement and dedication of people, not just to business, not just to one bottom line, but to issues of health that combine both of these aspects of social. That Patients Like Me, which is a startup that is looking to connect patients from around the world with others who might have similar symptoms, learning about what treatments have worked for them, and sort of sharing information about how to get better health care. Skillshare, which is a startup that's looking to sort of democratize education and share literally the skills within a local community to sort of enable education between one person to another. Kickstarter, which has obviously done an amazing job at facilitating the funding of projects. This is just project-based right now, but I think there's a really big opportunity for this to shift the way that we do finance. There's a big dialogue right now around collective funding for startups. And it's probably just a matter of time before the legal rules are rewritten so that can happen, which will be huge. Etsy, which obviously creates, a platform, a massive platform, millions of dollars every month they make by enabling local businesses. They're driven, again, not just by one bottom line, but by purpose and passion to make the world a better place. And I think that's not quite a dangerous combination, but really interesting because I feel like it means that they're really driven beyond even as much drive as typical entrepreneurs have to really really figure out the answers to these problems. How do we make our education system work better? How do we make insurance more transparent? How do we make healthcare more affordable, more distributed? Why do these problems exist? And they're just sort of often driven by personal experience or passion to figure it out. And so I guess to the point of this conference, what does that mean for big business? I really think that it means that social entrepreneurs are creating or giving a lot of insight to the future of where particular industries are going. They're disrupting those industries, they're finding inequalities, they're finding opportunities. And if you look at, I think social entrepreneurs can give a lot of insight, particularly into societal or sociocultural issues around why there are these problems to exist with that traditional business can tend to overlook. So that can seem kind of frightening for a lot of large companies, but I actually feel like it's a chance to take leadership in making the world a better place. I've done a bunch of work on partnerships between social enterprises and global business as a way to look at how big business can form partnerships, collaborations, learn with and by social entrepreneurs who are doing this kind of work. We've worked on developing everything from joint ventures to partnerships, working again in collaboration with businesses who inherently have a lot of expertise, potential for technical sort of scale and resources, with the social entrepreneurs who are testing a lot of stuff out, and again finding out the insights about what's really needed on the ground, what works, and lots of times what doesn't, which is really important for big businesses. I figured it would be good to sort of share a couple of examples of what that could look like and what success could look like. This is a pretty famous case study about Dannon Food Group, which is obviously creates Dannon yogurt, one of the biggest food groups in the world. They partnered with Muhammad Yunus, who is known for microfinance. He's banker to the poor, created a way for low-income people to have access to credit. And they looked at the issue of food and nutrition. Obviously, Dannon is a really big corporation with lots of resources, technical scale, and know-how around food and nutrition. Created a super high nutrient yogurt, which they made super affordable. Again, looking at the newly socially or networked way of doing things. Developed sort of very local production facilities. So they made job creation inherent to the model and something that aided the business too. So they had local manufacturing production facilities that worked with local farmers who now had a way to sell their milk and product to help make this product. They then went another step and had it super distributed in working with local women in the villages to actually sell the yogurt. So those women then had job creation and were able to gain an income from the sales of this yogurt. It did really well. They're still operating in Bangladesh and have sort of, aided the health and well-being of a lot of people through this yogurt, which was made super available, and it ended up turning a profit as well. Again, the local motors example is really interesting, a way of engaging multiple stakeholders and creating value together. Their designers are often automotive designers who don't have that much, who oftentimes, there's not that much time or need as far as car design as much anymore. And so designers can collaboratively work on this platform on cars. Millions of sketches have been submitted. There are different prize models, so financial reimbursement for working together on designing a car. But they don't try to do everything from scratch. There's obviously the opportunity to use what big business has already created, including capacity. One of the things that I think is really interesting about this is that they're not taking on the automotive industries. If anything, they're working with bigger companies that have excess capacity in production plants to be able to produce more locally and take advantage of that excess capacity. So if there's a plant in Detroit and you live near that area, you can have, you can order a car specifically to you that uses the extra capacity of that development of that plant. What else? So we've done some work with Nokia as well around mobile technology and the opportunity for mobile technology to drive societal change. Again, business-based opportunities, particularly in markets like Brazil or Africa or China, where it doesn't need to be extractionary, it doesn't need to be super proprietary. If anything, we invited innovators, entrepreneurs, people from corporations across, ranging from Intel to Orange, to the continent of Africa even, to talk about what the business opportunities are to drive social change. So that dialogue is no longer separate, and it doesn't need to be closed. IP can start to be shared a bit more, and it's been really interesting working on this actually because of the purpose-driven component. I think a lot of the struggle between collaboration between startups, startup culture, and corporate is the potential for having your ideas stolen, which is oftentimes still an issue. But from my experience in working with the social side of things, a lot of startups that I've worked with or social innovators understand the social opportunity to work with a company that has the kind of reach that some of these corporations do to create something that benefits society and to see that scale realized for a technology that could help thousands of people if done by startup, billions of people if done in collaboration with a corporation. Again, this is just sort of the M-Pesa reference, which is a technology that was developed in the developing world, and I think has a lot of opportunity to transfer it to some place like here. So I think there's a lot of some of those examples I gave previously sort of show how collaborations can be developed between startups and corporations within this sort of new paradigm of moving from scarcity towards collaboration, towards much more open, towards much more developing structures that allow people to participate and enable that human potential that we were talking about, going from consumers as passive, and again, literally consumers, to people who can be active participants and even shareholders, to regarding producers and stakeholders also as potential collaborators, as opposed to people who need to, you need to work with to absolutely minimize cost. Just skip. This is just sort of some more examples of how that can work through things like open innovation and collaboration, again, joint ventures. And there have been some really interesting work by groups even like Mayo Clinic who are working at rapid prototyping innovations and working with entrepreneurs to do that. So beyond some of those more tactical ways of collaborating with social enterprises, I think that there's a real opportunity to create a vision that leads us forward. I think this is sort of an interesting definition of innovation by John Kao, who runs the Institute for Large-Scale Innovation and is quite a guru in the space. He really just said the other day that innovation is the set of tools and processes by which we create the future. And so my question is, what about a better future? What does that look like? How can we get there? I think that this is sort of where big business and social entrepreneurs can come together to create some leadership as well. How do we think about together where we're trying to go? What does a better future in healthcare, in innovation, or in education, in mobility or transportation, in cities and urban development. What does that look like? And can we come together to build that? That's sort of something that I'm working on via the feast that I mentioned. We're creating a much more open platform where we're inviting innovators from around New York, the country, the world, to come and showcase, what it is they're doing, the tools and processes by which we can create the future. And I think that we're also working with, people like the city and people like big corporations to say, okay, we have the power and the potential to make that future a reality. So how do we envision that in collaboration with the entrepreneurs who are sort of leading that and developing the actual tools by which to create it? So in essence, we're really just working together to create a better future. I think better industry by helping everyone, entrepreneurs, as well as potential consumers, realize their potential, your potential. So thank you.